Hey guys, Ben Payne here, and today we're back once again for another video, and this time we have travelled up to Teamsport Leicester to take on the BIKC Regional Final. Now, as you know, if you've watched the last video, we are competing in the middleweight category. I can't wait to get on track today. I'm not going to have too much external footage. We're going to jump straight into it. Now, sort of the format for this one is we have a practice qualifying at the beginning to sort of decide the grids. Obviously, we're going to be in two different groups of 12, so we'll see where we end up in that one. We've then got two heats, which are 8 minutes each, and then this will then determine where we start in the semi-final. Now, the top half of the finishers in the semi-final then move on to the grand final. This is where we got knocked out last year at Coventry, so we're hoping to go one step further this year and hopefully, fingers crossed, make our way to nationals. Now, I am here extremely early. I've given Alfie Richardson a lift up, who is in the lightweight category, so we've had a nice early start, waking up at 5 AM, so we're going to try and just jump in, stick out the day and see how it all goes. Now, before we jump into the footage, if you do enjoy this video, can you please leave a like down below, as I really do appreciate it. And if you're new to the channel, if you haven't already, make sure to hit the subscribe button, as it really does help me out. Now, without further ado, we're going to jump into the footage in qualifying and we'll see how we end up today. Here we are then, guys, jumping straight into qualifying. I'm going to show you the first sort of lap of me warming up, and then we're going to jump straight into my fastest lap of qualifying. Now, one thing I realised pretty quickly is we'd be split into two groups, obviously, as I mentioned, and unfortunately we seem to get stuck into an absolutely horrendous group, with the top 4 from Bristol and also the top 2 from Birmingham all being stuck into the same group. And on top of this, I realised pretty quickly that the kart I was using was also the same kart that had come pretty much one of the last in every single session that I'd watched during the lightweight finals, which I wasn't too impressed with. And earlier in the session with qualifying, I was getting overtaken by almost everyone, and my lap times just weren't reflecting, even though I felt that I was driving quite well. So we're going to jump into qualifying here. You can see straight away we are behind Luke Child-Maple, who's in kart number 16. I was in kart number 9, and I was just trying to carry as much momentum through the track as I possibly could. Now, this is one lap before our flying lap, and our flying lap, our best lap of qualifying, was in fact the last one of the session. So we come round here around the last couple of corners. I felt like I was keeping it quite tidy around most of the track, tried to keep my foot in on as many of the corners as I can, but unfortunately I just seem to be losing time to Luke around every single straight, and you can see how much less power my car actually had out of the corners compared to Luke's. You can see he's flying off, and I really want to apologise off the bat for the angle of the camera. Now, this is going to be the same throughout every single heat and final that we're in. You can see me complaining about the power in my car as we drive down there, and that causes me to go into the barrier, so losing a few tenths there probably. But unfortunately the camera angle is quite low, so I would like to apologise for that throughout the rest of the video. But we come around the last corner here, and we come across the line with a 37.189, which only put us in 5th position for the heats. So with that pretty poor qualifying done out of the way, you can see that we were not in 5th, but we were in fact in 6th position for both of our heats. So on this one at Leicester, we were starting with a rolling start around the backside of the circuit to try and bunch us all together nicely, and we got underway. There are a few false starts in some of the heats which I've cut out, so all of the heats will just show us getting underway straight away, and we come across the start finish line here for the official start of the race. You can see we're in 6th position, and we've got everything to do ahead of us. We've got a bunch of drivers with high pedigree in front of us, and we also have a few behind us as well, so we weren't in the best of positions. Again, apologies for the camera angle, it's absolutely abysmal. Apparently my head was leaning so far forward in this one that I just didn't really want to look up. So in front of us we got Harley and Jay in 1st and 2nd. We also got Luke in front of us in car number 14. We've got Harrison in front of him. All great drivers from Bristol and Birmingham. We've also got Luke Mallard, I believe that is, in 3rd position as well. So we've got some really high performing drivers in this one, and we're just going to try and get involved and try and make the move stick as best as we can. You can see our first lap, we come across the line with a 37.711. Now, my fastest lap before this day from doing practice, as you guys know, was a 37. dead. Now, this was done in a practice session, which I didn't actually publicise on YouTube, just because when I went up, I think I got a little bit unhappy with some of the karts there, and I didn't feel like I was able to really show my true potential. And obviously the last video from Leicester, we were getting 37.5, so we're already on for some pretty decent pace, but we still haven't managed to actually break down into the 36-second region, which I think is where we need to be in order for our lap times to be competitive, for us to be in the top 2 in each of the heats, which is ideally where you need to be. Obviously then you start in the top 2 for the semi-final if you finish in those positions, and then this will give you the best chance at top 3. Obviously you'll be in the top 4 overall if you finish first or second in the semi-final. So we're still sat down in 6th position here. You can see Harrison is defending from Luke up ahead of us, and it's only slowing us down to the top 2 and also the person in 3rd position as well. So I realised pretty quickly that we had to try and make our way past as quickly as possible, as we were being held up and we were just sort of stuck in a train. Now, as you may have seen if you have been a long time subscriber for about a year, I'm not the kind of person in a regional final that is going to sit in a train. Obviously we didn't do this at Coventry, but we paid the ultimate price as we went down the inside in an area where we shouldn't have, and we ended up getting a penalty which kicked us out of the grand final. Now, this was obviously in the back of my mind, as I felt a bit of deja vu at this point. We were sort of in the same position as we were at Coventry. I believe we qualified in 5th there last year, so I knew that we had a lot to do if we had any chance of getting through in this regional final. So again, you can see we're just getting right up behind the 2 guys up ahead of us, and I felt that my kart in this one was very usable. Luke goes for a move down the inside, sort of, I think it was an alright move, a little bit of contact, but then he slows down to let Harrison back through, and Kelvin behind us barrels through as well, so we've now lost a position. I try and move to the right to keep the racing line. I sort of get forced out, so now instead of gaining a position through that, we've actually been compromised quite heavily, back down into 7th, and I will be honest, I was a little bit miffed off at this point. I was quite annoyed about being put down a position. You can see me shaking my head, and now I wanted to get my head down even further. So if the camera drops even further, I'm really sorry, but I wanted to get my head back down even further and try and get the position back that I'd lost, and try and regain some of the positions that I think we could have been able to have with our pace later on in the race. You can see we're all over the back of Kelvin up ahead of us. Obviously Kelvin is the driver that came in 3rd position in the middleweights at Bristol, so we know he's a very capable driver, and he was driving quite well on the day as well. Unfortunately, we both seem to have quite slow karts in qualifying, which caused us to be a little bit lower down than I think we should have been, but obviously it was a very competitive group, so we're taking nothing away from anyone that we are racing against. Now we can see we're right up on the back of Kelvin here, looking for the inside, but we decide against it, give him a little bit of a nudge to try and say, look, let's try and push forward, try and catch up to the guys ahead that are battling. And up ahead, Luke has actually managed to get past Harrison here. You can see Kelvin's looking for a way past. Luckily for him, he shuts the door off just in time for me to sort of poke my nose down the inside. You see Kelvin weaving all over the place there to stop me from going down the inside into the bank corner, which I think was a little bit dangerous, if I'm honest, the way he did it. I was trying to set up a switch back here, but it goes quite defensive going into the double apex corner at the top section of the track. And again, we're coming back down into the final corner. You can see I'm getting a little bit frustrated here sitting behind Kelvin. We're getting a 38-second lap time, which is over a second off where I think that we need to be if we want to be competitive on the day. And you can see we're just losing time by being stuck behind Kelvin here. I think I'm driving some pretty good and clean lines when I am on my own in a bit of clean air, but being stuck behind the guys here up ahead, it really was difficult to try and maintain the braking points and figuring out when to turn into the corner, just because everyone sort of bunched up quite heavily into the hairpins, obviously going from a very high speed part of the track, especially coming down the ramp here into the first corner, and then everyone having to brake together into a very slow braking zone. It was quite difficult to actually sort of think of a way to get past, if I'm honest. We come across the line now of our fastest lap yet at 37.182, so we're getting a little bit better now. We're getting into the groove of the track. Obviously I find this track wasn't very much suited to me. I don't really like hairpin corners indoors, if I'm honest. I feel that I'm a little bit heavier than everyone else, and it bogs the cart down a little bit. Obviously for this one I was weighing in at about 82.5 kilos, where the minimum weight for this sort of championship is 75, so I'm giving away about 7.5 kilos to some of the other guys as well, but we're not going to use weight as an excuse. We don't want to do that. I just don't think I was driving on point, but instead of that, we've gone right down the inside of Kelvin here. Very clean move, a little bit of contact there up the inside, but we managed to beat him to the apex going into the first corner, and I don't think he liked it as he went for a big dive bomb coming into the second hairpin on the track, and that's just cost us so much time to the drivers up ahead. So I was a little bit annoyed about that, as I thought that my move was quite clean. Managed to get alongside him and make my way past into the first braking zone, but unfortunately we were sort of punted off the racing line going into the second hairpin. So we're up into 6th once again, which is where we started, but we have lost a whole heap of time to Luke and Harrison, who are up ahead in 4th and 5th. So there was really no chance for me at this one of getting a top 3 by the end of the heat. You could probably see just a little flash on the right hand side there. Obviously it's quite difficult to see from the camera angle, but a little flash on the right hand side there, and that was actually Harley and Jay who was sort of racing away in 1st and 2nd. They completely gapped the rest of everyone else at this point, and I knew that there was going to be no chance of a podium for this heat. But I just thought if I could keep my head down, keep driving quite smoothly and trying to maintain some of the racing lines, that I would be able to catch up to Harrison in kart number 20, who's up ahead of us in 5th position. At this point I look over my shoulder and I've managed to gain a little bit of a gap to Kelvin as well. We come across the line with our fastest lap of the day so far, a 37.166 second lap time, which I was quite happy with. We were getting quicker and quicker, and I was finding myself to become more comfortable and more accustomed to the track the more we were driving around, and this only led to me sort of finding myself catching up to Harrison up ahead, which was only giving me more and more confidence. You can see a little bit of a mistake there going into the bank corner, probably my weakest section of the track. I just wasn't able to dial it in correctly on any of the laps I did, if I'm honest, and this just led to me losing a bit of time to the other guys around me. But we do come across the line on this lap, a 37.332, so being quite consistent, low 37s, but with that little mistake on the banked corner, we have lost a bit of time to the drivers around us. So again, you can see I am being quite clean through the rest of the track, trying to stay as tight to the apex as I can, trying to rotate the car early and get on the throttle as early as I can. That was sort of the key here. Just get your foot on the throttle as hard and as fast as you can, as it just felt like the earlier you could do it, the more momentum you're going to be able to carry out of the corner, and this was going to lead to having a better lap time and better drive out of the corner. Now again, lifting off a little bit through the last couple of corners there, and we come across the line with our fastest lap of the race yet again. So I was really trying to put the pace on at this point in the race. I can see Harrison was getting reeled in bit by bit, more and more, and I thought that if there was enough time left in the session, I'd be able to push my way up into 5th position, and for me that would be quite a successful heat, as I would have gained a position, especially after being pushed down to 7th at the early points in the heat. So we came across the line on our last lap, 37.129, and this has led to me being right up the back of Harrison now. I thought if we had one more lap left, we would be able to make the move on him. However, as we come down the ramp and round the last corner, unfortunately it was in fact the checkered flag. So you probably will see that I was quite frustrated at this point, hitting the steering wheel out of a little bit of anger, throwing my head up. But we're going to jump into the second heat. So moving on from the first heat, we're jumping into the second heat, obviously starting in exactly the same positions as we did in the first one. I knew that we had it all to do if we wanted any chance of even making it to the grand final at this point. Obviously being in 6th, that's always going to put us right at the back of the grand final, which I don't think really justifies our ability or our true pace at the track. So we're going to jump straight into this one. We come across the line obviously to start the race off. We are in 6th position. We haven't had any initial lap catastrophes, and we're right on the back of Luke, who is in kart number 9, the car that I used in qualifying, which I really could not get a handle on at all. I felt it was really slow out of the corners and I just didn't enjoy it whatsoever. So we're going to jump in here. You can see we're right on the back of everyone. We're in the train and we're just going to try and get our head down, and we were really determined in this one to get forward as quickly as we could. Now for this heat, I was in fact in kart number 6, which was deemed to be the absolute pinnacle of all holy karts on the day. Now this kart was absolutely insane. It felt about 2 or 3 attempts quicker than some of the other karts I used on the day, and you can see I'm trying to get to grips with it going into the braking zones just because I had so much overspeed, and this kart was an absolute rocket ship. So I knew that if any sort of heat was going to be a blessing, it had to be this one. I had to get my head down and I had to make some move sticks if I wanted any sort of chance in getting up anywhere near the top 3 in the grand final at all. So here you can see we're all over the back of Harrison and Luke once again, much like the same as the first heat. You can see the drivers in the top 3 positions, Harley, Jay and Luke all sort of driving off into the distance. So I just wanted to try and get through as quickly as I can, but unfortunately Kelvin sends an absolutely huge dive bomb down the inside, all legal, all fair, and unfortunately we're back down into 7th position once again, which, just like the first heat, just was such an annoyance to me, as I thought I already had enough to do and now I have even more to get done. So I was trying not to lose my head at this point, trying to get my head down, even lifting myself up out of the seat, shaking my head, shaking off the frustrations, and just really trying to get back into this race. Obviously I knew that I had so much to do now, with about 9 minutes left into the race, that I had to put it all out there on the track and leave absolutely nothing left unturned. I had to go for it. So we could see me now, I was really trying to throw the kart into the first corner to get as good an exit out as I could, trying to do the same that I was doing in the first heat. You can see again, just trying to get as close to the hairpin as possible, almost power sliding through the corner, but not so much where you lose grip, because if you lose any grip, the back end of the kart's going to go wayward and you're going to lose all of your momentum coming out of the corner. So obviously up ahead of us we got 6th, 5th and 4th. If we get into 4th in this one, I would be extremely happy, as it would mean that we would have been able to make back 3 positions from being pushed down from 6th right at the beginning of the race. Now I can see again Harrison is holding up the other guys, but on top of this we are coming across the line with our fastest lap of the day yet again at 37.043. so I knew if I could get this pace early on in this race, then this kart was really going to warm up and a 36-second lap time was really on the cards for us. Now again, you could see we're coming down the back into the bank corner, just going a little bit wide there, and I just really, once again, as I mentioned in the first heat, just was not clicking with the bank corner. You can see the guys up ahead are all having a bit of a battle. Luke goes down the inside of Luke, sorry, and then Kelvin tries to go around the outside of Luke. I give Luke a little bit of a push down the inside, and for some reason he just sort of goes wide and sort of tries to cover Kelvin off, and this leads to me just being able to snake down the inside and manage to gain 2 positions going into the last 2 corners, which I was really happy with. We'd now moved up a place compared to where we started earlier in the race, so we're up into 5th position, and I knew from the kart that Luke was in, obviously I mentioned he was in kart 9, I was going to have a ton more pace than him coming towards the end of the race. So I just had to get my head down, try and lose Harrison behind, who was obviously holding up Kelvin, and now it was just a matter of could we make the move stick on Luke later in the race. Now you can see I'm getting my head down, we're coming across the line with a 36.950, so my first 36-second lap time of the day and my first 36-second lap time at the track, which I was really happy with. And obviously I can't give myself all the credit, as this kart was an absolute alien to drive. It felt so good and I was really enjoying how it felt through the corners. Now again, we're just trying to get nice and tight to the banked corner, and this time we've actually seemed to have got it quite right, hitting the apex, and you can see how much time we're gaining on Luke as we come into sort of the second half of the session here. So we're coming down the ramp, coming around the last couple of corners, trying to get my foot off and on the accelerator once again as quickly as possible. I found that going flat out through that corner just really wasn't working for me, so I was trying to sort of slow the kart down by letting off the throttle and getting back on the throttle, and it seems to be working, as we've now got down to a 36.799 second lap time. So now we're all over the back of Luke. We've got some really good pace here and we're trying to size up a move on him. You can see he's starting to work together, but quite frankly, in this sort of format, you don't really have time to work together, as much as I could see as well how much overspeed I had on Luke, as I managed to catch up with him in just 2 laps. So I was trying to get past him as quickly as I could, trying to find my way past. I didn't want to be held behind him for too long. So you can see we've got some overspeed here coming around the last couple of corners here and into the first corner. You can see I'm all over the back of him here, trying to force myself not to touch with him, trying to look for some sort of switchback move, but I didn't quite have the overspeed there. So we have to sit behind him once again for another lap, not quite carrying the correct speed out of the second hairpin, and that's caused me to lose a couple of kart lengths to Luke up ahead. You can see the top 3 guys, Harley, Jay and Luke, once again all racing away into the distance. So I didn't want to be left behind here. I thought that if I get past Luke quickly, then I would be able to tag on the back of the top 3 drivers and we'd be in for an absolutely solid result. So again, we're right up behind Luke and we're looking for a move down the inside. We're all over the back of him. He doesn't quite go defensive here, but we still follow him through behind him. We're trying to get a better run out of the hairpin, but we just haven't seemed to get it because we're just using a little bit too much steering angle to ensure that we don't sort of collide into the back of his kart. We were trying to sort of maintain our momentum whilst also trying to find a little bit of extra space. You can see how much earlier I'm having to brake for this corner in order to not load into the back of Luke. I was trying to go to the left here to try and look for a switchback going into the top corner. I backed out of it there for some reason. I don't quite know why. I decided against it. I didn't think that was the correct place to make the move. I didn't think I had the overspeed without making too much contact. And again, you can see as we come across the line how much time we're losing at 37.004. And I said enough's enough. I sent a big dive bomb down the inside, and unfortunately for me, the back end of the car did actually slide out a little bit as we went for the move. And as you will see as we come round a couple of laps later, that move did in fact result in a 5-second penalty for myself. Now, I didn't realise this at the time, so I thought it was a pretty solid move. I think I beat Luke to the apex, and now I was just trying to hammer my way forward as quickly as I could. Obviously, I knew I had more pace than Luke, so I thought like I had the top 3 drivers in my sight, and I was determined just to get on the back of them and try and mix it up with them if I could. We come across the line 37.229. Obviously, as I said, we still haven't received a penalty at this point in the race. So for me at this point, I thought I was solidly in 4th position, which I was really happy with, gaining 2 positions in the race. And I just thought I had the pace to try and catch up with the guys at the front. Obviously, Harley's driving quite defensive in front of Jay and Luke up ahead, so he was driving a good race, driving quite defensively and holding that 1st position. And I thought that if I could manage to catch up to the back of them, then we'd be on for a very good scrap. However, as we come down the last couple of corners here, I do lift my head up slightly. You might see it. You can see the flag on the left-hand side. We did, in fact, receive a 5-second penalty for that move on Luke, which I was really disappointed with. You can see me shaking my head a little bit, as I felt it was a little bit unjustified, but I can see where the marshals are coming from, so it was fair enough. It was a fair enough penalty. In my head, I was thinking about giving Luke the position back and taking P5, but out of my own personal pride, I just wanted to try and get his head as far as I could, try and maintain a 5-second gap to anyone behind me, which obviously wasn't going to happen with how close the field was, and just try and place as high as I could just from overall pure pace from myself. And you can see I'm doing just that, putting in faster lap after faster lap. Our fastest lap of the day so far, 36.774, which I do in fact believe was my fastest lap of the whole day at 36.774. So that penalty sort of kicked me into a higher gear, and you can see we are gaining a little bit of time on the top 3 drivers up ahead. However, we're just not quite close enough to the guys up ahead to actually make any sort of attack. So as we come around the last couple of corners here, we did in fact finish on track in 4th position. However, with the 5-second penalty applied, we did finish in P7. So we're going to jump into the semi-final and see where this has left us. With the 2 heats out of the way, finishing in 6th and 7th, this unfortunately dropped us down into 7th or a net 13th or 14th overall out of everyone for our semi-final, which I wasn't too happy with. And seeing Kelvin in car number 6, which is obviously the car I had in the last heat, didn't give me too much hope, but I was going to get my head down, try my best and see where we're going to end up in this one. So obviously we come across the line in 7th. Kelvin goes for a very early dive bomb down the inside up into 5th, and I decided to follow him through up into 6th. So we've already gained a position, which is exactly what we need to get up into the grand final. Obviously the top 6 go through to the grand final. Now at this point, for some bizarre reason, I thought I started in 8th and I was now up into 7th. So I was trying my very hardest to make one more move. I was trying to say to Kelvin, look, let's work together, get through the pack. I know that you're in an absolute rocket of a car. Let's just see where we can end up by forcing through together and just see where we end up in this race. Obviously our first lap, we come across the line, obviously a bit of contact on the first corner, or going a little bit wide, come across the line with 37.480. You can see I'm going completely wayward through the first hairpin, had to readjust to this car on the fly once again, much like you do in every other car, and for some reason I was just finding it very dodgy through the first corner on the brakes in this one. So I don't know if I got a little bit too excited, but I was determined to get my head down and try and make as many moves stick as I could. So we're up into 6th, which is where we've been for most of our time in this sort of regional final. I can see Kelvin was all over the back of Ainsley, or wheel to wheel, up ahead of us in kart number 1. He's in 4th position, so I knew that Kelvin was going to be looking for a move down the inside very soon. I thought if I could be behind him when he makes the move, then that would be us up into 5th position as well. You can see we're all over the back of Kelvin now as he's beginning to get held up behind 4th position. So trying to get as close as we can without losing a lot of time. Unfortunately, we got a little bit wayward through the bank corner, and I realised with the overspeed Kelvin has in kart number 6 that he was going to go for a move down the inside. There he goes, right down the inside, a very clean move, 50-50 to the apex, sort of side-by-side contact, and he's up into 4th, and I'm now stuck behind Ainsley, who is in 5th position. So I realised if I was going to keep up with Kelvin, at least I had to make the move stick as quickly and as cleanly as I possibly could. So you can see we're right up behind him here. He's driving a little bit defensive, sticking to the middle of the track, which I didn't really want to see, as I wanted to try and get past him as quickly as I could. So you can see again, we're all over the back of him here as we're going into the bank corner, getting it a little bit better this time, trying to turn in a little bit earlier, and we're trying to look for a move of the same way that Kelvin did. But you can see he's sort of covering it off quite well, and all this battling is just causing us to lose time to the guys up ahead. You can see Kelvin's already catching up to 3rd position now, so I knew that I had a lot of work to do if I wanted any chance in this race of getting a higher position in the grand final. Obviously, whatever position you start in or finish in is where you start, and instead here I go for a big dive bomb down the inside into the 2nd hairpin. A lot of contact there, but as it was deemed by the marshals on the side, it wasn't deemed a penalty, it was deemed a clean move. Now, I'm very 50-50. I've seen my view of it, and I've also seen an external view of it. I'm not entirely sure if that was penalty worthy or not. I'll let you guys decide down below in the comment section. Probably the most controversial overtake of the day, that one, as we sort of ended up going through the barriers in order to make the move stick, but Ainsley did turn into us as we were going past him. So I'll leave that up to you guys. So if you let me know down below in the comments what you guys think. I'm very 50-50 on it. I'm not too sure still, if I'm honest, but I wasn't given the penalty, and if I'm honest, I was sort of waiting for it as I came round the next few laps, much like I was earlier in the second heat, or the last race we did, where the penalty board came up a couple of laps later, where luckily for me, I didn't see it at all during the race. I didn't get a penalty, so in my eyes it must have been a clean move, so I was happy with it. I was up into 5th position, which would have started us in 9th or 10th for the grand final. At the moment, I knew that if Kelvin was going to get stuck behind the guys in 3rd and 2nd, who were battling with each other up ahead, I believe Sam Slater was in 1st position at this point, and he had begun to fly off into distance. You could see the group of 3 up ahead of us as well. If I could catch up with them by the end of the semi-final, then I knew that I would be in for a very good shot in the grand final of having a better starting position, and if I could make some more moves stick in the grand final, then we'd be right up there for the hunt for the top 3 overall. So again, we come across the line here being quite quick, just like we were in our second heat, so clearly our momentum and form is carrying on through into the semi-final. 37.084, very happy with this lap time. Low 37s, high 36s is what we're aiming for in order to be competitive in this competition, and you can see we're sort of maintaining the gap. We're not exactly losing anything to the drivers up ahead. We're using a little bit too much steering angle here and trying to use any sort of placebo we can, lifting ourselves up out of the seat in order to get the weight off the rear wheels, which doesn't actually help, if I'm honest. I don't know why I was doing it. I was just trying to use any mental placebo I could to urge myself forward into getting a good lap time. We come across the line there at 37.274, so a little bit slow on that one. A couple of mistakes in there, little small mistakes, which obviously led to us losing a little bit of time. And up ahead, you can see that Kelvin has actually made the move stick on the driver in 3rd position, which I believe was Luke Maple, who was obviously the driver that we made the move on in the last heat. And unfortunately, we just seem to keep dive bombing Luke Maple for the whole sort of event. So I'm really sorry, Luke. I really didn't mean to just target you, but it just seems to be the way that it was falling. So again, you can see with the battling up ahead, we are managing to close up bit by bit through each of the laps. Obviously the semi-final is a little bit longer than the 10-minute sort of heat, so we had a little bit more time to get into our groove, get into our rhythm, and you can see how consistent we're being. Only 5 thousandths off our fastest lap so far, and we're right up on the back of the guys up ahead now. I can see they were within touching distance, a little bit more fighting between them, and I was going to be all over the back of Luke once again, much like I have been for the whole day, if I'm honest. So you can see here once again, sponsored by card number 5, which I'll lift ourselves out of the seat, more mental placebo as we go up the ramp, and we're just trying to take the last couple of corners as clean and tidy as we can, trying to get as close to the apexes as we can to minimise the track distance. And we come across the line with 36.0 30.940, so another 36-second lap time, which I was really happy with, being really competitive in this race. You can see Kelvin goes for a big dive bomb up the inside, which is exactly what I needed. It allows Luke to go back through, so all this fighting has now allowed me to get right on the back of this train. Obviously Kelvin's apologising for his move, and unfortunately he did lose a little bit of time. Now here I was a little bit confused. I thought Luke was trying to let Kelvin back through. Kelvin sort of said no, let's just carry on and race, and I was just a bit perplexed. If I was a little bit more on it, I would have taken the inside line, tried to get past Kelvin there as he tried to catch him napping, but unfortunately we just weren't quite close enough. But with all of this going on, it has allowed us right back into the hunt here, so now we are battling from 2nd to 5th here up ahead. We're really in the hunt now for a really solid position in this semi-final. Obviously from where we've started pretty much in 7th place, I knew that if we were able to finish in the top 3 in this one, we'd be in an absolutely excellent position compared to how we have been earlier in the day. You see Kelvin's looking over his shoulder. He didn't expect me to be right on the back of him at this point in the race, and you could see I'm losing a little bit of time coming out of the bank corner once again. Obviously, as I've mentioned, that sort of section of the track really was my weakest part of the track, but I think I was making up for it throughout the rest of the lap. We come across the line of 37.250, not quite quick enough to where we want to be, but you can see how much of a cleaner line I'm managing to take by being a bit more clean air compared to the guys up ahead. I was almost trying to drive as if they weren't in front of me and just trying to take some normal racing lines to try and get the momentum out of the car, out of the hairpins. Obviously the hairpins are absolutely crucial. Obviously the whole track is pretty much full of hairpins, so if you get any of them wrong, it's just going to cause you to lose so much time up ahead. So you can see second sort of starting to break away now, and we've got Luke in third defending from Kelvin, and I was just waiting for any opportunity to sort of pounce on Kelvin if he made a little bit of a mistake. So again, you can see we're all over the back of Kelvin now. He's come across the line, our fastest lap in the semi-final, 36.818, and we're really on some solid pace now at this point. And I was just trying to look for when would be the best opportunity to go for a move on Kelvin, try and catch him napping while he's stuck behind Luke, and try and steal that 4th position from him. So we're coming into the last couple of laps now, and we're all over the back of him once again, trying to take a little bit of a wider line to look for a switch back. You can see my car just didn't quite have the power out of the banked hairpin, and I think it was just the lines I was taking, if I was honest. You can see I'm shaking my head there, a little bit annoyed at myself that I'm just losing a little bit too much time. You can see once again we come across the line 4 tenths on our last lap at 37.226, a little bit too far to go for a move on Kelvin. Obviously if the gap's going to open up, we're going to go for it. I'm not afraid to make a move at this point in the day. As I mentioned to many other people while I was off track in talking to people in the lightweight and the heavyweight category, if you're this far down in the heats and you're this far down in the semi-final, you're only going to have to go for a move. The worst thing that's going to happen is you're going to get a penalty. You're not in the top 3 at this point, and you're quite far off, because if you merge the 2 groups together, the 2 semi-finals, you're technically in 9th or 10th, which is nowhere near good enough. So here at this point, I think enough was enough. We go for a move down the inside of Kelvin and managed to beat him to the apex once again, much like we did in the first heat. We make a nice clean move, a little bit of contact up the inside, but that leads us up into 4th place, which I was really happy with. And now we're coming round the last few corners here, or the second half of the lap, sorry, and we're just trying to catch up to Luke and the driver in 2nd position if we can, to maybe try and steal a podium later in the race. But unfortunately here we leave the door open a little bit too wide. Kelvin bundles his way down the inside, and I didn't realise this was the last lap of the race, so I'm going to leave you guys with how I was honestly feeling. So I thought I would leave the end of the semi-final in there for you guys, just to show I'm human. I have my own reactions. Now we're jumping into this one. We're started in P8. Now despite Kelvin finishing in front of us, you'll notice that he's not in front of us here in the grand final. Now this was actually due to the fact that he was actually underweighted and using artificial ballast, which got found out in the grand final, and he then got ejected from the race. So we did start in P8. We managed to make our way around Andreas in the first corner on the initial lap, and this has now led us up into P7. So a perfect start to our race, and if we had any chance of the top 3, which you can see all up ahead, Jay, Sam Slater and Harley, who have been driving well all day, then we would have to get past as quickly as possible. Now we're going to jump straight into this one once again behind Luke Maple, who seems to be magnetised to us for this whole event, and I knew that we were going to have to make the move as quickly and as cleanly as possible if we wanted any chance in this one. So we're in kart number 10 in this one. Obviously Luke up ahead in kart number 20. We got the banked hairpin a little bit wrong, and now we're just underway. Now while the footage rolls out, I was a little bit annoyed about Kelvin getting disqualified. Obviously, he'd been up against us in almost every race. He'd put us down a couple of positions in a couple of the heats, and we managed to get the better of him on one occasion, and he actually beat us to the punch in the semi-final on the last lap. Now, without this, we probably would have started 1 or 2 more positions higher up in the grand final, which in my head's quite annoying to think about, as you'll see where we end up by the end of the race. But it is what it is, and we just had to get our head down. I don't think it was very fair that he was caught with artificial ballast. I just think it just diminishes all achievements, if I'm honest. But we're going to get into the rest of the race in here. This video is about me and not him. So we're sat in P7 at the moment as we come round our first lap, a 38.117. We come across the line on our second one, a 37.361, and we are all over the back of Luke here, and we're just trying to think about where we are able to make an overtake stick on him, where we could do it in a clean manner, where obviously when we overtook him earlier in the second heat, we ended up getting a penalty. Now if we're going to get a penalty in this one, then the whole day is going to come crashing down by the end of it. So we want to come across and past him as cleanly as we can, trying to stay as tight to the apex as I can and take some nice clean lines. You can see over exuberated myself a little bit there on that apex, clipping the inside barrier. This caused us to lose a kart length or 2 to Luke up ahead, but we do come across the line on this lap with a 37.365, so only 4 thousandths off our fastest lap so far, and we're just really willing to try and catch up with the guys up ahead. Now this race wasn't going to be one that was very pretty. There was a few karts that actually broke down in this one, so there is a yellow or red flag, sorry, halfway through, which I have skipped through. So we're just going to jump into the rest of the race here and see where we end up. Now we are still stuck behind Luke here. We're trying to just be as consistent as we can be, just trying to take as steady lines as we can, trying to almost work with Luke to try and bridge the gap that is sort of formed between 5th and 6th. Now we come across the line at 37.312, so we are getting quicker throughout the session, but we're still a little bit of time off the pace of where we need to be in. I feel that this is due to the fact that we are sort of stuck behind Luke. I'm having to brake a little bit earlier, not drive as cleanly as I think I can. Obviously, just by backing off a little bit and giving Luke a little bit of the space. Obviously, I can see up ahead that Sam Slater in first place was driving very defensively in front of Harley and Jay, which obviously meant that it was backing up the whole pack. So I thought if I let off a little bit, let Luke do his work, we will be able to bridge the gap, and this is exactly what has happened perfectly. Obviously, you see Luke Mallard there up in 5th as well, and also a driver from Manchester as well up in 4th, who was driving very well throughout the day in the opposite group to us. So he managed to position himself in 4th position. Obviously, as I mentioned earlier in the video, I'm not someone that's going to trundle around in 7th and be happy with it. So I was going to do anything that I could to try and make my way through, and maybe even try and get in grasp and reach of one of those top 3 positions. Now again, we're going a little bit wider coming up the ramp. I realised that I gave him a little bit of a gap to the drivers behind at this point. Obviously Andreas, if you haven't watched his video, he has made a video on the BIKC Regional Final here at Leicester as well, so go and give that a watch if you want to see his footage. His camera was a little bit higher than me, so you might be able to see a little bit more, to be fair to him. So he did a very good job for his first BIKC as well. So he was behind me, but we did have a little bit of a gap to him at this point. So I felt quite comfortable that he wasn't going to go for a dive bomb on us and make a move. So I was trying to take more of the more conventional racing lines here as we come around on the bank corner once again, losing a bit of time as I have done throughout the whole day. Unfortunately, a little bit of my bogey corner there, I just wasn't able to get the kart rotated and get on the throttle in the correct way. But you can see as well, Luke is all over the back of the other Luke, who is in 5th now at this point, and I was trying to think, when could I make a move without sort of causing too much carnage, much like I did in Coventry last year. I wanted to try and make my way through in as clean a way as possible without compromising anyone else. Now you can see how close the racing is. Obviously it's the grand final in the middleweight category, and everyone is sort of nose to tail one another. It's a really close and clean battle with one another, which I was really enjoying. I was really happy to be a part of this. It was a great time and a great opportunity to be a part of it. So again, we're right up behind Luke now. You can see how much much closer every single lap. The pack is just getting more and more bunched together, and you can also see this in the lap times. We're not actually able to go any faster than our fastest lap so far, which is a 37.157. You can see the drivers up ahead going side by side, sort of opening the gaps up. Luke goes a little bit slower here, and I decided to chuck it down the inside here, trying to make a move on Luke, have a little bit of a clip with the other Luke, and unfortunately I wasn't quite able to make the move stick. It was a bit of a clean move, a little bit of bumping on the apex, but we were able to get past, but unfortunately we just didn't quite have the momentum coming out of the corner to make the move stick, so we decided to slot back in 7th before Andreas could sneak up the inside, much like Kelvin did earlier in the day, to make his way past us. So we have sort of split the group a little bit with that move, so now we just want to try and get past Luke. I felt like I was being held up at this point, and again we just send a really big dive bomb down the inside of Luke there, and once again we managed to beat him to the apex and make our way up into 6th position. So that's one position we've managed to knock off now at this point in the race, and honestly for me at this point I could see that the top 3 were within grasping distance. I just wanted to get my head down, try and break away from Luke as much as I can. Obviously I've made a little bit of a gap by making that move, and I wanted to try and tag along to the guys from Manchester and Birmingham and really reel them in and prove to myself that I had it in me to get into the top flight of the positions here at Leicester. So again, come across the line 37.676. You can see everyone is being held up from Sam Slater, driving really defensively, driving a really good race here just to ensure that he cannot get overtaken into this final. And again, it's just causing everyone to be backed up more and more, and this was only giving me more of an opportunity to sort of send the same sort of move down the inside, much like I had on Luke. So I was trying to get my head in. You can see I'm mentally once again using the placebo of dragging myself over the wheel of the cart to try and get my way up as close as I could. And obviously as everyone's being held up, we are right on the back now of this leading train. You can see Jay there in 3rd in the white suit, so we are really within a grasp of making a move stick. We decided to go quite early down the inside, give a little bump to the driver in 4th position, which unfortunately wasn't quite fair. Unfortunately I got left hung out to dry here right round the outside, and this allows Luke back down the inside of us, back down into 7th. So for a split second there we were up into 5th place, trying to be very eager, trying to catch some people napping, but unfortunately it just didn't quite pay off, and in fact we ended up losing a position back down into P7, which I was a little bit annoyed about, but there was still plenty of time left in this race to try and catch back up. Now you can see from this, as we're coming down the ramp into the last couple of corners, the driver in 4th position actually pulls over to the side because his car actually cuts out completely, which I was a bit confused about. I was a bit annoyed about because I felt like I was in good momentum at this point. So red flags came out, and this did lead to 5 minutes left in the session. Now we're going to jump straight back in. The driver whose car cut out did in fact get his position reinstated back up into P4. You can see Luke goes for a dive bomb quite early under the restart into the driver in P4, which has allowed the top 3 to sort of escape into the distance. I wasn't trying to go for a move too early, as I thought if we could all work together we'd be able to stay as close as we could. You can see Luke's going for a move down the inside, doesn't quite have the overspeed. I was trying to push Luke through around the outside, but he didn't want any of it, and he holds the inside to try and defend. Andreas dives us down the inside there, and he doesn't cut back across to hold the position back, so I'm able to get 7th, sorry, back from 8th once again, as I'm unsure why Andreas didn't quite cut across and maintain that position. If I'm honest, I think he was just a little bit too tentative there, and if he was looking back at this, I think he would have cut across and kept that move regardless. So again, we got quite lucky there, managing to hold on to P7. We got caught napping there into the first real braking zone of the lap, and we are down in P7 once again, so we're able to get the move back on Andreas, which I was quite happy with. Didn't want to lose out there and end up in the position that we started in, because I don't think that really justifies how we are driving in this one. Again, we're right up behind Luke as we're going into the second hairpin once again, nose to tail from 4th down to 7th, and I believe Andreas was right on my gearbox as well at this point. So we had about 5 or 6 of us in a train. Obviously the top 3 had begun to break away a little bit, so I wanted to try and hold back a little bit here, try and let them bridge the gap to one another, because I didn't quite see Luke in P5, not P6. Obviously it's quite confusing with them both being right next to each other, but I didn't want Luke to try, and I didn't see him at any point really go for a move on the driver in P4, which I was really confused with, because if I was in that position, I would have been sending a move down the inside at any opportunity. Again, Luke just opens the corner up for us. We have a little bit of a nudge on the driver ahead, but as he was exiting the corner, it didn't really count as illegal contact, so we sort of bumped him out and gave him an advantage if anything. So again, we've sent a move down the inside of Luke, as I mentioned earlier in the video. We just seem to be magnetised the whole time, and he just left the door open a little bit there on the second hairpin as he was moving back to the left from defending to try and open the corner up. We just seized the opportunity and dived down the inside. So we're back up into P6 once again, and you can see the drivers in 4th and 5th are now all over the back of the top 3 once again, due to Sam Slater holding up the other guys in 2nd and 3rd. So you can see Jay's driving really defensive now as well, which is only backing up 4th and 5th towards me. So I knew that if we could get on it early and we could get into the fray as quickly as we could, then we would have an opportunity of gaining some of these positions back, which I was really excited for, and I was really hoping that I could push myself to really get back into this fight. Obviously we're a few kart lengths back at this point, but I knew with every lap that was going past, these guys were just going to hold each other up by braking in that continuous sort of squeeze fashion that I mentioned earlier in the video on into the first braking zone. You could see how much time we managed to gain as we're right on the back of the driver in kart number 9. We have Luke Mallard up ahead of us once again, so we're all over the back of him, and we're just trying to think of a way to get past. Obviously there's not too much longer left. I wasn't sure how much longer was left. Obviously due to that red flag, I felt like it threw my momentum off a little bit. I felt like I was in good stead to try and make some more moves later into the race, but unfortunately with that red flag, it just seemed to throw me off a little bit, and the kart just seemed to cool down a little bit. So it wasn't until now where the kart felt like it was beginning to come alive, and mentally I was coming alive as we were getting right into the deep sections of the race. Obviously our lap times aren't very quick, but this is due to being stuck up behind the drivers up ahead. Now I wasn't wanting to sit behind. You can see again we go for a dive bomb down the inside. We try and squeeze through, but unfortunately we just don't quite have the power to make it through in P5. So instead we're having to stick in P6. You see Luke's looking over his shoulder. I think he was a bit perplexed at the move we're trying to make. Obviously I'm not going to sit in 6th position if only the top 3 go through, so I was trying my hardest at any opportunity, any gaps that were opening up. I was just trying to get into the gap and really try and make the move stick. Obviously in the briefing room they try and discourage contacts. I think this makes a lot of people quite nervous before going into the race, as people seem to think that any contact we make is going to result in a penalty, and that's obviously not the case. If you're 50-50 beside the drivers to the apex or before the apex, then it's not going to be an illegal move even if you make contact, just because it's just fair racing. It's very difficult to make a move indoors, especially on these tight tracks, without making contact. So I think that a lot of people were just happy to sit in the train and be content with sitting in 5th or 4th, which obviously I wasn't. So I was just really trying to rain down on the back of the guys up ahead. We come into the last couple of corners here, and we do come across the line on this lap to the checkered flag in P6. Nothing more we could do. Congratulations to the top 3 guys, Sam Slater and Harley Smith from Bristol and Jamie Foster from Birmingham. I wish you guys the best of luck at Warrington. I gave it my all, I tried my best, but we're going to jump into some post-race thoughts now and see how it goes. Okay then guys, so we've just finished off our BIKC regional final. We managed to finish in 6th place, which, if I'm honest, I'm really happy with considering the day that we've had. We've had absolute chaos. I tried to make up as many places as I could. Obviously we had kart 9 in qualifying, and unfortunately after watching the lightweights earlier in the day, it just was the slowest kart of the day, unfortunately. It's just the way it lies once again. So unfortunately, just like last year, we had a bit of a rough time getting stuck down in the lower sort of positions in the heats. This then led to us being quite far down in the semi-final. I tried to make as many moves through as we could. Obviously we had a penalty at one point as well, so to finish 6th overall out of anyone on the grid and making the most moves of the day out of anyone that has turned up to Leicester, I'm not going to argue with it. Even if some of them were a little bit questionable, I was just trying my best to make my way through the pack, and unfortunately we did come up short. So that does in fact bring us to the end of the video. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. If you have, can you please leave a like on the video down below, and if you're not already, or if you're new to the channel, can you also hit the subscribe button, as it really does help me out. As always, my Instagram and TikTok are linked down below in the description as well. So in the meantime, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Take care.